Good evening and welcome to yet another episode of VI Voices. I'm Emile Henderson III along with Natalie Nelson, Tang and Clint Ferris. And tonight we have a very special guest that we wanted to make sure that we introduced to our audience, Mr. Boyd McFarland. Welcome.
Thank you.
From time to time, he is a contributing correspondent. From time to time, you will see him on our show. And so we wanted to make sure that we had him here with us today so that we can get through some hot topics. You can get a feel for who he is and his personality. And so that we'll be able to get all the information out. So when I'm not here, or Natalie's not here, or Clint's not here, and Boyd is here, we'll feel like we're just still at home. Right? Right? So welcome to the show. We have an action-packed show tonight because, as you know, the at-large race for the senators, the at-large race has quite a lot of people running for it. In fact, there are about 4 Democrats that are actually running in the primary, and we have one of those individuals here tonight, Dr. Kern out of St. John, and so we'll have an opportunity to really speak with her and get to know who she is and find out what she plans to do if she's successful in that election. And we know that specific race is an important race because that person represents all 3 islands. So it's quite of a daunting task, I would think, but we'll see what she has to say when she gets on here. But I want to start out with what we usually start out with, hot topics. And we'll start out nationally. And we're going to start out, as you know, the Republicans have begun their convention today. And they're out there in Tampa. And they were all concerned about what would happen because of Tropical Storm Isaac. And they've kind of scaled it down a little bit. But I want to talk about it because Mitt Romney made what he said was a joke the other day when he made the comment that, and stressed that he was born in Michigan and he grew up in Michigan and his wife was born in Michigan and his wife grew up in Michigan, as if somehow somebody else running for president wasn't born in this country. When called on it, he says, we need some levity in politics. Do you think that that's levity?
Levity, my foot. There wasn't no levity. Because you make a comment and you move on. You don't stress it. You don't go into a whole pathology of your birth and your wife's birth. So I truly don't believe, I do believe it's another way of bringing this whole notion of Obama's birth and keeping it out there.
To get to a base?
Yes. And I think it's just, again, to me, it's to inflame and to enrage a certain portion of the electorate. And to me, if I was a referee in the NFL, that would be a yellow flag foul.
Well, it'll be red for me. Is there a red one? I don't know.
No, that's me talking about soccer when they give him the red card.
I wasn't sure.
Is
that a red card?
Yeah, give him
okay, well, I would do red. Is the red that gets you out?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the one I would do. Because I agree with you that it's really to inflame prejudices and to get that base out to keep it moving.
Well, gentlemen, to me, I think it's a non-issue. I wouldn't even give him a moment's notice on that. He wants to inflame, and by us giving him the attention, even the constituents that he's trying to get the attention of, maybe just, I'm tired of it, and I think we really need to stick to the issues. And I think what he's afraid of is facing Obama head-on with the issues that really count.
I agree with
that. Bread and butter issues that affect us.
I do agree with that also. I think, but I do disagree with the fact that it wouldn't matter. It does matter to certain people, to certain of the constituents, because of the level of mentality that certain people have, so they would buy into it. But I do agree though with you about, I think it was strategically done. Yes, he did it on purpose. He did it. He knew exactly what he was doing when he did it, and it had nothing to do with a joke. It doesn't interest me much as it would people in America, but I think we could bring it home and consider any one of us who are born here and think about the scrutiny we would have to deal with if we decide to run for presidency. And I think that that's something that we should look into for a man as his stature to make that kind of comment.
I agree with that. But like I said, this is going to be important week. I debated whether or not I even want to watch the Republican National Convention, but it's important that we do, so we can see what they're doing.
Correct, but even before you go on, remember now, you talk about the convention. Now remember, it's rather placed in a very funny situation because they had to scale back because of the convention. Now what happens if they proceed and the storm magnifies to a category 2, category 3, and it hits New Orleans? What do they then do? Do they bring the convention to a halt because they don't want to say that people are suffering and they don't think they should be in Tampa celebrating? Because they're in a
they're in a tricky dilemma. Very big catch-22. You're right, but they've already had to scale back certain stuff. And you're right, if this hurricane does make it to landfall and does harm, and it's for all intents and purposes, I understand it's going directly to the New Orleans area, the Gulf Coast area, they can't afford to have another calamity like that again.
No,
Like that.
Think about it. It brings the ghost of George Bush into this presidency.
Right.
Especially as a Republican.
Yeah.
But here what happens though, if President Obama, from what I understand, he's on it,
Yes.
what will happen is you will see the clear distinction in leadership between what happened 7 years ago and what's happening now with this current
Correct.
president. And so the Republicans are really in a hard situation because it's like, well, do we this was our chance to put him out there, to humanize him, to see him for a different kind of person and kind of win over certain people, because usually you get a boost right after your convention. I'm not sure if they're going to get the kind of boost that they need
Correct.
to get into the general rest of their election.
Because they may find that 2 persons or 3 persons may get all the coverage if it hits New Orleans. 1, President Obama. Number 2, the Governor Jinder.
Yes.
He's going to get a lot of coverage.
Yes.
And then Mitchell Andrew, I think he's the mayor of New Orleans. Those 3 figures are going to be
Dominating
the airwaves and taken away from Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
And one of the other problems they're going to have is if they're going to end up having to scale back, they're going to have to cut out a lot of the people that they anticipated being here. They're not going to have enough time now to fit all of the
They've
major
already
figures.
scaled back people
So they're
who
gonna
they
have,
wanted to
you
speak
know,
that won't be able to speak. I think they cut out
Yeah.
Donald Trump. He was supposed to speak tonight, and they've taken him out.
And they're really saying, we took Donald Trump out because they think Donald Trump is a red herring. They think that basically he's going to come in and just like how Republicans love to vilify the present vice president, they're thinking that that's the same thing, the role that Donald Trump is going to bring to their convention. So they're glad to not have him there.
I'm sure we'll talk about this next week because theirs end next week and the Democrats begin next week, and it'll be very interesting to see how. Because, if this hurricane does in fact make it to landfall and cause damage, then you have the Democrats who are coming in next week who kind of have to deal on the heels of the aftermath of what occurred.
Right.
And so we're hoping that nothing like that occurs. We're hoping that the people of New Orleans and the rest of the Gulf Coast areas will be spared from this. So we all know too well about hurricanes, and we're hoping that, that they will be spared. So our prayers go out with them. The next thing we want to talk about as our hot topic, as you know, the good Senator Samuel-Sanis has introduced a bill on peace officer status, and that's to give the federal agents peace officer status. And as you know, this kind of stemmed from that case in St. Thomas where the ATF agent shot the gentleman and was charged locally, and there was this big push and taken to district court saying you can't charge him criminally because he's a federal agent, and Judge Gomez turned around and said, nope, you can, because it's a local crime and the local court has that. And he was called everything but a child of God from Congress, even though his decision appeared to be quite sound, to the point that Congress then put into legislation a bill that would preclude any state or territorial charges against a federal agent in state court. You could only go to the federal courts. It's still in Congress, it's still languishing there, but Samuel has come out with this peace officer status, and his basis is, well, he believes it's going to bring more resources and support if they're able to have that status. What do y'all think about that?
I think we already have the resources and the support, being that we're unincorporated territory. Whenever we need any kind of assistance or supplemental training, the federal office could assist in that direction or that area. We have to look at the whole purpose of the bill. And the whole purpose of the bill, in my opinion, always resurfaced again because of the crime issue. And I don't really think that making federal officers peace officers or give them peace officers status will address the crime issue. I think we need to go to the root cause of the problem, the crime issue, and nobody is seeming to address that, to address the root cause. So until we do that, I don't think there will be reduction in crime.
I tend to agree with you too, and I think that's why that bill was blocked. I think it was blocked at 7-6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was blocked.
And
That's
sent
not
to
the first
committee,
time.
sent back to
Sent
committee,
back to
actually.
committee. And I think it's not the first time that they've had blockages regarding that, and I know that the senators split when it comes to that peace officer status, but I really don't see it making much of a difference, if any at all.
No, but do recognize though that in most other states, the federal agents have that kind of peace officer status with the states.
Yeah.
We just happen to don't have that. And I always thought, well,
We don't need
our
that.
relationship is different,
Right.
meaning that we're not a state. And so we are a for all intents and purposes, a federal possession
Right.
of the United States, and they can come in at any time.
Sure.
Other states,
And-
other states have it, but I mean, has anyone done the research as to the reduction in crime, the percentages, how much it went down, what difference it make? I don't really think it's gonna make a difference. That's my.
What about the gun issue? That's the big issue, and I think this is where all this is pushing from, and it's partly is that we're having all these guns coming into the territory.
But who protects the borders?
And that's the argument with border protection. Yes, we need more federal agents on the borders to protect our borders. There shouldn't be God is safeguarding us and monitoring us as we leave the territory. They should be monitoring what's coming in.
Right.
And that's the issue right there. And I do believe there should be a separation of local and state and national. And let that be so. Let the police be federal, let the FBI, ATF be federal, let our police be local. I don't think we need
that
to put it.
separation already exists.
Yeah.
Federal officers are already there to protect the
Thank
borders,
you.
but they protect American borders. Well, our status is what's preventing them. We need to address the status issue.
But you know what? Everybody's acting as if we don't have federal agents here. I mean,
It's
we
not a
have them
minimum, but
here.
we have them. We have
They're
federal
here,
protection.
and the ATF people are the ones who are charged with these issues
Right.
with
Sure.
weapons. They're
Right.
the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms
Correct.
department, and so that's their role. But one thing that always kind of confused me, I shouldn't use the word confused, not confused. I should say that kind of baffled me to some degree. That's kind of the same thing. Is the fact that I can go to Texas and I can buy 10 firearms. And I'm coming here and I can declare here that I have bought 10 firearms. And I can come here, give away 9, and go and register 1 with the VIPD. And the VIPD has no knowledge that I came in with 10 because Customs doesn't report to the VIPD that I came in with 10 guns. So now 9 guns are running around on the street. So there's no communication, there's no understanding between the two to share information so that when I come in with 10, immediately Customs will send to the VIPD, 10 weapons have come in with Emile Henderson III. The law requires that when I come into the territory, within 24 hours, I have to register with VIPD. So that when now I get this notice, or VIPD gets this notice on the 27th, if on the 28th, they don't see Emile Henderson III coming in there, or I come in on the 28th but only have 4, they should be able to say, well, you know, you registered 10, you declared 10, where are the other 6? We don't have that, so now you have this amount of guns on the
Why
street.
would they register it if it's not being enforced? The law is on the books, but it's not being enforced. Additionally, I think that the administration and all law enforcement officers should come together with some kind of plan to put, we are in charge of our borders once you're coming into the Virgin Islands.
Within
What
3
happened, I mean,
miles,
you could
yes.
walk right off the airport. You could purchase, like you said, you could purchase weapons in America and walk right off the airport in your luggage, and no one would know. Why is that? We don't have, do we have officers roaming the airport, patrolling, we used to say roaming, just looking at suspicious activity? That in itself could be
We
a
have the
deterrent.
TSA people.
The TSA is
And
protecting
then-
those that are going abroad.
Yeah, that are going, but nobody's really coming. Yeah, I agree with that.
But then, so we're talking about where's the laws? Because right now it's just policy. Yeah, I'm not hearing no laws, I'm just
Right.
hearing policy. And the policy says that there should be some communication between border protection, Homeland Security, and the police department.
No, I'm not saying this should be a policy. What I'm saying is that there isn't even a policy.
Okay, so do we
For
need
that issue.
So that's what we should be seeing coming out of our legislature or coming out of Congress. This peace officer status should not even be discussed right now.
I don't think
Let's
it's necessary.
Yeah,
Right.
Let's deal with what our challenges are.
Well, I listen to you gentlemen, you know, and I tend to agree with what you're saying, but I think that no one has touched the key issue as to where these guns are coming from. These guns are rampant on this island, on this Virgin Islands to begin with. And I think, just like with drugs, it looks like this is one of the areas where it's very easy to bring into the U.S. territory.
It's easy to bring a bunch
It's
of
very
things
easy.
into the
You know, when
territory.
you think about it, it's so easy. So then, when we see all our young men out there, unfortunately, killing each other, you know, and we wondering where are these guns coming from. Obviously, our priorities, where our legislators are concerned, may not necessarily be in the right place.
Yeah, and you're right.
Because it seems to me that if we have so many guns coming in here, we know that. I don't have a problem if they set up some sort of a relationship to work with the feds, like they do when they do the bus and everything. You have the feds, you have the locals, everybody come together, right? And they put policies and procedures into place to assist each other. So like you said, there's communication between this or among the various agencies that may somehow bring down that statistic that they have. But right now, I think it's like it's a free for all.
What I think for me, the problem is where this bill is coming from. This bill is coming from that issue with that ATF agent being charged criminally in St. Thomas in our local courts. Now, any officer who's involved, whether you're a VIPD or not, who's involved in a killing that is not justified or not done within the course of your employment, the scope of your employment, is subject to criminal liability in our local courts. So there should be no different for a federal agent who comes here and is involved in a killing that is not within the course and scope of his employment to be charged in our local courts. But this bill is stemming from this issue because remember after that they pulled the ATF agents.
They sure did.
Because they didn't want them being sure. They're not going to come back unless they have peace officer status. As if somehow that's going to preclude you from being charged criminally for criminal conduct. So my problem is where that bill, or the feelings that I feel, where that bill is coming from to deal with that issue. What I would like to see is what most states have, where there is the VIPD, or there's a police department, and there's like a territorial bureau of investigations, which is similar to the federal bureau of investigations. Most states have them, they call them the state bureau of investigations. And they handle a lot of those gun issues and all these other things to separate what the VIPD is doing from what they are doing and separate their goals so we don't have to rely so much on federal agents. And so the VIPD can deal with those local laws that are necessary, while the Territorial Bureau of Investigations can also investigate crimes and do different things, kind of akin to that, and they can share a relationship with the federal government and see how that works out. But, you know.
Because at the end of the day, we don't want to.
That might be too logical.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. Next is the Constitution Convention Revision Bill. I think we touched on this last week. It has passed. We're waiting for the government to decide whether or not he's going to sign that bill, which will, as I said, hijack, and I think the delegate agree with me, hijack the role from the Constitutional Convention, 5th Constitutional Convention. And on September 4th, we're going to have the president of the Constitutional Convention, Narcisse James II, will be on the show. We'll have a full hour on that because we want to make sure people understand what they've been doing so there's not misinformation about what's been going on about that. But I personally believe that Congress sent the bill, sent it back to the Constitutional Convention for them to deal with it. Not to change it or to have new lawyers come in to discuss or to help or to change or to do anything. So now you're adding 5 new voices to this who may not think, and as a lawyer, we can look at one thing and see it completely differently. And I just think it adds more confusion, especially when the people have not voted for those 5 individuals to participate in the process.
I think it's an injustice to the people of the Virgin Islands. I mean, you had 30 or 31 people elected to serve as delegates to this Constitution. So for them to subside that and vote on this bill, or come up with this bill to create revisions for it, I think that's an injustice to the Virgin Islands people. And not only that, I mean, who are these 5 people?
What's the logic?
Well, one will be appointed by the governor, one will be appointed by the legal council of the legislature, one from the VI bar.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think it's ridiculous.
We already know the governor's position
and I think it's illegal,
proposal anyway.
actually.
He's the one that refused to send it to DC in the first
But you
place,
know,
so we
I know
already
about
know
that.
his position.
But
So,
I don't like the process. I am not in favor of this process. I keep saying that this was a political football, a political diversion on the part of Senator Russell. And to me that's unfair. And,
Of course.
and that's totally unfair.
It sat there for 2 years. This document has been back in the territory for 2 years.
Correct.
And you wait until now, when you're running for office, to bring it back up again.
See, and that's the challenge here. And we as voters need to look at it. Ever so often, our leaders play politics with this Constitution. They did it in 2010 and they're doing it again in 2012.
Yeah.
Again, politics. They're playing politics and to me it's divisive politics that only benefits those and further divides our community and really doesn't do us justice and give us what we need.
I agree.
A document that lends to government operation and strengthens it.
Yeah.
And that's
Well, you know, like I said, Narcisse James will be here. He's the president of the Constitutional Convention. We've devoted an entire hour to that, and we're going to go through and discuss this document, discuss some of the things that happen in the document, and for where they are in the process, what they intend to do, what they plan to do.
But you see, I'm going to have to say this now publicly. I think former Lieutenant Governor Los James, he also created this. Because in 2010, when he was supposed to continue to champion this issue, he found it necessary to go and jump in bed with the same individual who was the roadblock for this entire process. So I think former Governor James also created this mess that we presently have.
Well, he's coming on, so
He's
we'll
going to
hear
be
what he
very
got to say.
interesting to hear, and so he'll be sitting next to you.
No problem. I've said
So we're
that
going
I'm
to make
gonna
sure that
continue.
we have that in place. The one last thing we want to talk about, I know we're pretty much running over hot topics, but I want to make sure we get this in. Tomorrow, August
that's right.
28th, will be the debate between Donna Christensen and Stacey Plaskett. And you know, when they were on the show, we said we need to see a debate with these two. And so there's going to be one. It'll be at the Great Hall at UVI. It's sponsored by the VI Action Group. It'll be very interesting. Narcisse and I will be covering that down there, and you all will be up here, and so we'll discuss that again when we come back the following week. But we have a lot of stuff going on with that.
I have to say, it's a shame that it's only being broadcast on the web, streamed on the web. I think you're doing the public a disservice by not going to the popular media that's out there, our medium that's out there in terms of TV and radio. The public is not going to get a chance, especially a lot of seniors who get their information from radio and from television. But I'm looking forward to a very,
It'll be very interesting.
debate.
So, well, you know, we'll see how it goes. But when we get back, we will have Dr. Iris Kern with us. Good evening and welcome back to VI Voices. And tonight we have with us Dr. Iris Kern, who is an aspirant for the Senator-at-Large seat in the 30th legislature, but you will have to first go through a Democratic primary.
Absolutely.
So we welcome you to our show at VI Voices. Thank you so much for appearing tonight, and we wanted to make sure that everyone has a chance to kind of get a feel for the candidates, and particularly to get a feel for who you are.
I really appreciate you having me. A lot of people do know me because I've had a TV show, I've had a radio show, I've been active in the Virgin Islands since we arrived over 25 years ago. I ran the Domestic Violence Agency on St. John for over 15 years. I worked for the Department of Mental Health. I've been writing domestic violence policy for the entire territory for the last several years, under the auspices of both the Attorney General's office and the VI Police Department. That policy was to attempt to unify the way domestic violence victims are treated by the police, by the prosecutors, and by the judges. And it's interesting because one of the questions that the Daily News asks is, what legislation would you introduce to try to reduce violence if you're elected? And it was easy for me to say it's already been written. All we have to do is introduce it, because I really believe that this piece of this document, these recommendations, these policies, procedures, and protocols would do a tremendous amount to reduce violence and also to really lay the foundation for consistency and for uniformity in the way victims are treated. We don't have that.
Won't be the base of your policy, the foundation of what you're proposing?
Equity. Equity, no matter where, no matter who the victim is, no matter where their victimization takes place. Because right now, it does matter.
You know, and I'm glad you said that, because I've always believed that there are certain laws within our jurisdiction that is not in equity, or is not equitable, I should say. And primarily when it deals with DV matters where the victim is male, as opposed to where the victim is female.
That's a good point.
And you know, as of late, we've had at least 2 judges who have issued opinions saying that this specific provision of law that made a felony, aggravated felony, where a male hits a female, is unconstitutional, because the converse is not true.
Right.
Where the female hits the male, that is just regular misdemeanor.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's because of the strength.
The court didn't buy that. They said no, DV is DV.
Well, DV is DV, and it hasn't been treated that way. I think we also have to look at the shifting dynamics, because when I first went into the domestic violence field, there were very few males who ever came forward and said that they were victims, whereas now, between 15 and 20% of all the reported cases are of men.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize that. Now, whether that means that men are being victimized more, or whether it means that they are now sufficiently secure that they're willing to come forward and say, I've been victimized, we can debate.
Right.
But the reality is they're coming forward at a far
Well, we're going to definitely have you back when we do that show, because I would love for you to be on that show for that.
I'd be happy to do that.
But the people of the Virgin Islands are going to want to know, because the role of the Senator-at-Large, to me, is a difficult role, because you have to really represent three completely different sets of people.
Absolutely.
Even though we're just two districts, but you have to look out for the people of St. Croix who believe that nothing really happens for us over here in St. Croix. You have those in St. John who I think also has the same mentality that nothing happens for us either. And then you have St. Thomas who, the perception is everything happens for them. And so you have to kind of balance that well. Now, how will you be able, are you ready to be that person who, in all intents and purposes, to me, I think the at-large senator is pretty much one of the most powerful senators, because you have to sit in the middle and decide, is it going to be this or it's going to be this?
I think you also have to be willing and able to sit up and be counted. And that you have to be willing to be there when the vote comes down, and your willingness to state your opinion as to why you're making the decisions that you're making. And I think you need to really, again, I really believe in equity. And so I believe in trying to represent all the people of the Virgin Islands. I've lived on St. John for coming up to 25 years. I've watched the changes. I'm not happy with all the changes. In my opinion, St. John is, without question, the most beautiful physically of the three islands, just from the physical beauty perspective. But in terms of the social dynamics and what's been happening in terms of the disparity between those who have so much and those who have so little, I mean, that's a tragedy that I've seen happen in the last 25 years.
And I was just going to ask you about that, because you said in your platform that you want to reduce the disparity between the advantage and the disadvantage.
Yes.
And you're somehow zeroing in on St. John as being, what, more prevalent?
I think we have a greater disparity than anywhere else, although the disparity exists throughout the territory. There's not a part of the territory that doesn't have the haves and have-nots, if you will. But in St. John, let me give you a very personal example. I was working with a young girl who lived with her father and uncle in one room that had no electricity and no water. That room was within 1.5 miles of a house that was for sale for $17.2 million. Now, how do you think that child felt every day when she goes by this $17 million home and she's living in one room without water and without electricity? That kind of disparity is simply unacceptable, and we have to do something.
What have you done to familiarize yourself with the issues of each of the islands? And the reason I asked that, and I said I want to broach with the fact that the at-large senator represents all three islands, is because I've noticed as of late, a lot of people seem to think that the at-large senator is the senator for the island of St. John. And I have to constantly tell people, St. John is in a district with St. Thomas. There are two districts, the St. Thomas-St. John districts. Nothing precludes a resident of St. John from running for a regular Senate seat like anybody else.
Absolutely.
But for some reason, it's almost as if or the people of St. John have allowed themselves to be told that you're relegated to running for the at-large seat. So what have you done to familiarize yourself with the issues of all three islands, and how are you going to combat those issues?
Well, first of all, one of my advantages in running is the fact that I've been a therapist, a psychotherapist, for a good portion of my life, which means that I've learned how to listen. And I understand, I go into situations understanding that there's at least two sides to every story, and sometimes there's a lot more than two. But I really am a good listener. And one of the things that I've done is make myself available on all three islands. And that isn't new. That isn't since I'm running. That's since I've been here. I live on St. John. There's no way I can help but listen, watch, and understand what's going on. Not everybody agrees with my perspective, and that's fine. But I have seen what's happening on St. John, and it doesn't all please me. So I listen and I observe. Same thing. I've worked on St. Thomas, especially for the last 5 years. I've been working on St. Thomas. I commute every day. I can't help but watch and see what's happening on St. Thomas and to listen. Remember, I'm a good listener.
No.
And as long as I've been active, an activist, and that's really my whole life for 25 years here, I've come to St. Paul on a regular basis. Coming here is not something new for me. You know, I have solid friends here that I visit regularly, and I like nothing better than what I did today, which was to come over very early to spend the entire day talking with people that I don't know, but engaging them and listening to what they have to say and to try to understand their perspective. Because that's what I think the senator's job is, not to impose their position, but to work for the people of the Virgin Islands.
You seem to be a people person. I've met you before, and
Yes.
you're engaging. And I know that you are proposing, or you would like to see the Senate reduced. And I think you mentioned something about in between. 15 there is now, and 5 that you've heard.
Yes.
You propose like 7 or
7.
some number like that, right? Why do you think it would be beneficial, and what would be your role in enforcing, you know?
Well, I would
something has to
introduce
come along?
legislation to
Why
reduce
would
the
you-
size
yes,
of the
I'm saying,
Senate.
what would be your role in instigating that?
Just that. I mean, I would introduce a bill to reduce the size of the Senate. 7 years ago, we had a non-voting referendum where the people of the territory very strongly recommended
I
a
remember.
reduction in the size. Again, that's not my opinion. That's the opinion of the people throughout the Virgin Islands, and it was totally ignored.
But do you think that the reduction in the size is going to bring what we're looking for, or do we need to have an actual change in the structure and how
I
we
think-
vote for those people who are in the legislature?
I think a reduction in the size is necessary but not sufficient. I think we need both.
Okay.
I think we really, and I think we need a reduction in the salaries. We are the 3rd highest paid senators in the country. We represent 110,000 people. How can we justify that?
Well, we have a full-time Senate here.
But Dr. Kern, one thing I keep saying with some of these things that aspirants and incumbents like yourself, they keep volleying these low-hanging fruits because it's nice to for them to hear education, reduction in the Senate, all of that stuff. Now, I'm big on education. You drive around St. Croix, you can see that we have not built a new elementary school since 1979, 78. I think the last elementary school that we built was Evelyn Williams School. And Evelyn Williams School, I believe, is pushing 40 years old or somewhere around there. Now, I think number 3 in your platform is all about education and changing your structure. Describe that structure for me, how it would look, and how you will probably attain funding to drive a strategic plan that will cause new school to be built.
It would be extremely difficult first for me, and I'm fully aware of that, to get my platform pushed, because some of the things I'm recommending really go against what the union is standing for. Because I'm talking about merit pay, for example. I don't believe teachers should be paid simply because they have longevity. I think teachers should be paid well, especially. They should get rewarded for excellence. And I think that's what it's about. And we should recognize that, and that's what we should do. I believe that the schools should be places that children want to go because they recognize that their education is going to open up options for them that they wouldn't otherwise have. When my children were in school, the criteria for me and where I sent them was that my children would enjoy going to school. They would be able to have fun. School education doesn't have to be painful. It can be a joyful experience, and it should be. One of my children received a merit scholarship to Antilles School. Many of you know Antilles or know of Antilles. Antilles School is what I believe every public school can and should be. It has diversity, it has quality, and it really individualizes the education.
How do we get there?
Yeah.
And
Again,
how do we get there, and how do you intend to get us there if you are successful?
I don't intend to back up. I intend to introduce legislation, and if that doesn't pass, I intend to introduce the next legislation. I intend to get together public and private marriages, if you will, because that's the only direction I think we can go. We need to work together public and private sector, because one or the other is not going to get us where we have to go. We have to do this together, and we have to do this for our children. One of the reasons, and if you do read my materials, you'll see that the primary, my first blank, has to do with violence. And that's where I've spent the last, well, I got my doctorate almost 40 years ago. That's where I've spent the last 50 years of my professional career, working on learning how to reduce violence and what we can do. Now, one of the things we can do is to give our children hope, because they don't have it. And one of the reasons I believe that they go around killing one another is because they have no hope for their future.
Dr. Kern, I don't know if you're simply introducing charter schools in your platform by talking about the margin of schools, of private and public, but no problem. You mentioned about merit pay, you talked about environment, changing the environment, but what about changes in governance and changes in school leadership?
That's all a part of what needs to be done, because if all of those pieces don't come together, you're not going to have a strong platform under which the schools can be built. I think the physical plants are also vitally important. When you go into some of our public schools, they are depressing places for our children to be, and they shouldn't be. We can build without great expense. We can build lovely, open, and that's one reason I use Antilles as an example. It is not an expensive physical plant, but it's one in which children can be comfortable, can take advantage of the wonderful breezes that we have, and can enjoy being there every day. We owe that to our children.
What I think, Dr. Kern, is really sad, and I want you to at least, I know we're going to be wrapping up in a few, but I want you to be able to let the people know that I think it's really sad, is the fact that on the island of St. John, they have no high school, they have no actual hospital. I mean, there's a lot of things that they don't have. 3/4, if I understood correctly, 3/4 of St. John is federal property. But they won't give, the federal government won't give any property to St. John unless they swap land with someplace else, which I think is ridiculous. What can you do to at least start the process of getting St. John to have their own high school, their own hospital, so they don't have to be traversing themselves across the water just to seek medical attention and
The
education?
land has already been identified as to where the high school can be built, and I think we have to not stop pushing until the monies have not completely been identified. Some of the monies have been identified, but we need to identify all of that money, and that needs to be made a priority, because we need to understand what we're doing to our children. My son got up at 5:30 in the morning in order to get to school for 8 o'clock.
What can you
Children shouldn't have to do that.
What can you offer the people of the Virgin Islands that's better than what we have now?
I think if you simply read my credentials, I don't think there's anybody running who has the combination of education and experience, especially in the field of social activism, that I have. I think we don't have people with that kind of history, and we need people with that kind of energy, that kind of commitment, and the kind of integrity that I bring with me. And I think that is unique and distinct, and I'm proud to share that with people.
Now, where can our audience, if they wanted to speak with you some more, see more of what you're about, where can they find you? Let the audience know.
Online, I can be found either on Facebook, or I do have a website, which is irishkern.com. I can be reached, and I'm happy to take phone calls. I have no problem whatever, taking phone calls. My home number is 693-5757. My cell phone is 244-0536. Don't call too late, because I do go to bed early and get up early, but I take early calls.
All right. Dr. Kern, I thank you so much for being on the show with us. I believe that our audience will have at least an opportunity to get a feel for who you are, and hopefully they will also reach out to you to get more information. We thank you for being on VI Voices
Thank
tonight.
you so much.
And best of luck.
Best of luck to you.
I really have enjoyed meeting you.
Thank you.
When we return, we will be here with Colleen Clark of the VI Action Group. Back in a moment. And welcome back to VI Voices, where we have a voice for our people. We hope that our people will have voices as well. On our show right now, we have Ms. Colleen Clark, who is the president of the VI Action Group. Welcome, Colleen.
Thank you.
So glad to have you here on VI Voices.
I'm glad to be here.
And as you know, you all, we want you to be on the show because tomorrow you all are sponsoring the debate for the Democratic primary for the delegate to Congress race. And on this show, we had both of them, Stacey Plaskett as well as Donna Christensen. And we said on that show, these people need a debate. We didn't know that you were going to do one at the time. But how is that coming along?
That's coming along fine. It's a lot of work, but I mean, everything is in place. We hope that the public will really come out and support us and the debate and come out and really listen to what is going to take place tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely going to be there to cover that and see how that's going. But I want to talk to tell us a little bit about who the VI Action Group is, because there's been a lot going on with you all.
Yes.
And so let us know, the audience know who you are, what the group is, what the aim of the group is.
Okay, well, basically the VI Action Group is a group of, majority of us are, well, not us, but a majority of the group is pretty much retirees. However, there are some younger people on the group. A few of us still work and take care of kids and all that good stuff. But it's a very diverse group of individuals that got together, and we initially started out with the recall effort, if you're familiar, should be familiar with.
Which one of them?
When the Board of Election.
Oh, okay.
We initially started the recall of 6 individual board members in January of this year. And so the group was basically formalized, because of that recall effort. We pretty much tried to be a voice for the people of the Virgin Islands. We work on educating the public on various issues that are happening in the public, whether it be election reform, whether it be education, whatever. But and I just want people to know that it's not just election that we want to focus on. It just so happens that that's the way we started out. But we eventually want to go in there and tackle other issues that are affecting the people in the community here. And we're basically acting as a voice to really educate, empower, inform, and really route up the people to start to take action instead of just sitting down and talking or complaining and not doing anything. We're being fearful and really getting out in the public and taking action.
Now, there actually, you mentioned elections, and we're in our election cycle for 2012, and there's been, from 2010, really, there's been major issues with people and whether or not they have that kind of belief in the election system. And our society is in danger when people don't have faith in their election system.
Exactly.
What is the group doing to try to return that kind of faith?
Well, of course, one of the biggest thing is really this fight that we had with recall. That's step number one. And one of the things that we felt is important is for us to really tackle election system, because election system is really, truly, and people don't realize it, is the core of a lot of our issues, the core of the problems that we are having here in the community. And the fight really starts there. A lot of people don't envision that in their head, but really and truly, we need to tackle the issues that are affecting the election system before we can start to venture out to other things. And so we just want the public to understand that it's important for us to really start the fight there. And it's not so much that we're focused on the election, it's just that we need to take care of right now and now.
Has the VI Action Group taken a stand one way or another regarding the situation with Senator Jackie Hanson as it relates to her eligibility to run again?
If the Board of Election has?
If your VI Action Group.
Well, yes. We, I initially wrote a letter which was addressed to the Joint Board of Election, basically questioning her eligibility as a candidate to run for the 2012 as a senatorial candidate. A hearing was called last Friday. We were there, so it was actually a 2-day hearing, Friday and Saturday, where the issues at hand were being discussed. Why is it that the crime of moral turpitude issue? I mean, there's a lot of other issues that came up in that hearing too. But basically, what I think that they missed was the fact that we are actually questioning whether she's eligible based on Section 6B of the Revised Organic Act. And did indeed the offenses that she was convicted of constitute crimes of moral turpitude.
And I have to say one thing. One, the group is very admirable that the group is very much engaged, and they're actually not just talking, they're actually involved, and they're making sure that members of the group are actually seeking elective office.
Yes.
Now, besides Senator Jackie Hanson and that particular issue, in the past we have had senators, aspirants, who have gone on to run even one seat, and they owed $50,000–$60,000 in taxes. What are you going to be doing at this present stage to ensure that the election system holds aspirants and incumbents alike accountable to following the policies and procedures that are actually prescribed to the Board of Elections?
Well, it starts right here with this Chucky Hansen issues, number one. This is the start. Hopefully we should hear something as far as the position of either the supervisor of election or the deputy supervisor of election on that hearing, and basically their decision on that. Hopefully we'll hear that this week. So that's a start. Now, we do plan, if it's done in our favor, I mean, we're still going full force. We're going to court. We've already made up our mind. That's what we're going to do. That's what we have to do. And so we'll move forward that way. Other things that we have been working on in the background, we've started to put some proposed policies and procedures in place, which we're going to present to the election system. They're not finalized as yet. We're still working. It's a work in progress. And, it's a start. And that's just some of the things that we've been trying to do.
I think every community needs a group like, whether you agree with the positions that groups like yours take or not, every group, every community needs a group like that because it fosters democracy. And we don't have to agree on everything.
Exactly.
But there needs to be challenges. But when you don't challenge something, then things fester. When people don't vote, that will get elected. And so we have to make sure that we are in that process. And what I see happening, because I hear it on the radio, I hear it on people talking. What I hear, and even tonight you said it, and I wanted to mention it, you said we're starting with the Chucky Hansen thing. And it's really not about her.
Right.
And I want to make sure that everybody understands that this issue is for take away her.
Right.
Put any other face you want on there. Should a person who's convicted of willful failure to file taxes be a part of our legislature?
Exactly.
That's the real issue. Remove her. And people are turning this into, well, you don't like her, and that's why you don't want her, or I like her, and I want her to stay. And I think we got to make sure that we keep focus so it's clear as to how we're doing what we're doing. And the issue is really, should anybody who wants to run for office, who's been convicted of a crime like that, be, or any crime involving moral turpitude, sit in our legislature?
But the first question to you, Ms. Clark, is that where Senate Attorney Henderson is leading to, it's going to be leading to a very, treacherous journey, because you're now going to be challenging, hoping to change the culture, because you're now telling people that how we elect our officials, even the things that we put in that process of considering officials going to have to now go out the door. Because how do you now consider someone who, whether they're involved in tax or they have something else, whether it's a federally misdemeanor, do you truly consider them for elective office?
That's right.
And that's the campaign you're going to be hoping to push. Are you going to be just hoping what do you hope to get out of all of this?
Well, one of the things that happen here is a lot of people here, they need to change their frame of mind when it comes to going out and actually voting for elected officials. A lot of times I hear, I'm voting for this person because, they just sound good on the radio, or they did this for me, and, I fried chicken, or, just some crazy stories, believe it or not. And we really need to change the mindset of people and the way people actually go out and make a decision, an informed decision as far as how they vote. And I think it's important for people to really understand the person behind the person that they're voting for. Not just the education or where they work, but also what kind of morals do these individuals have? Do they have integrity? Have they been convicted of any crimes involving moral turpitude back again? Do they pay the taxes? Come on. We need to really start looking very carefully at who we put in these elected offices. It's very important that we really start to get serious about this.
And the mindset that we have, this is a small, area, jurisdiction that we live in, and the mindset that people have based on the popularity contest and some of the things that you mentioned. What would the VI Action Group be doing specifically as it relates to reaching out to the voting populace and getting them to start changing that mindset?
Okay, well, this debate that we're having tomorrow is a start. First of all, we felt it was very important for us to have a debate versus a forum, because a lot of times, during election cycles, we do forums and we really don't get the gist of really what these individuals that's running are all about. And one of the things we wanted to change, is the way we really go out there and put candidate against candidate. I know it shouldn't sound like that, but that's basically what is happening. And we wanted to start out with a debate. And we basically wanted it to be an open forum where the public could really get involved. We've been soliciting questions from community organizations, and we will also be soliciting questions from the audience as they come in tomorrow night, right there, right then.
Right.
And so it's important for us to start really getting the public involved, and for us, this is a start. This is where we start.
Will you all be doing another delegate debate once this primary is completed?
I
know this one is just for the Democratic primary.
Right. We were hoping, initially when we planned the debate, it was actually going to be a debate between the Democrats and the Republicans, all four. But we had so many issues trying to coordinate dates because of the conventions and the fact that the dates of the election cycle has changed, and for the primary, that is. And so it was just a back and forth trying to plan. So we decided, you know what, let's tackle the Democrats, and we're hoping to have another one with the Republicans, and then after the primary have one big shambang with everybody. But remember, we're nonprofit, and it's a small group, and funding, it's very hard to get funding, and so we ask for anyone in the community who's wanting to help really help.
It's not going to be televised or on the radio?
It is going to be broadcast, streamed live on the internet, wtjx.org, channel 12. We are also getting the government access channel to come out. They're going to be recording, and of course it's not going to be live, but it's going to be televised at a later date.
Now, will the government access channel show the debate as it is? Because they're notorious for cutting out things.
You know what? I'm glad you tell me that, because now I'm going to write that down when we're finished, so I could make sure that they're going to play the whole thing.
Because I remember a couple years ago, actually the 2010 one, where they did the senatorial Democratic debate. It never aired. And that's why I'm going to stop there. But it never aired. So one may want to watch it on live stream to make sure you get to see everything, and then you can follow up with the access channel if it airs as well, once it comes out.
Well, we hope that doesn't happen. We hope that they will air exactly what took place. Because it's going to be a very interesting debate, because, really, we haven't really even having debates. And so it's going to be very interesting tomorrow.
And you know what? I haven't really seen much campaigning at all. Have you noticed?
No, I haven't seen, and it says a lot. But, and I think that should be one of our hot topics. But we won't go there. But we'll
come to that.
But one of the things I have to say, that you made a very telling comment, which I think maybe we need to start to look at. You said we're putting candidates against candidates, and at times we probably need to put candidates against candidates and start to compare them and see how does this candidate stand up to that particular candidate. We can do that in the delegate race, we can do that in the at-large race, but why can't we do that in the general election race? And I think we should do that.
Well, one of the reasons that we could do it, but one of the arguments for people would be that if we had districts, then you would know who's running for what, and then they'll be, which I do not support any districting of seats. I think it's political and attempted to be legal gerrymandering, so I don't support that at all.
That's another show.
But we need some way, but we already know. We tend to group certain senators. We know, and we know what constituents they're appealing to. So we can start to bring them up and say, okay, that's the candidate that's running for the East End voters. So let them go and debate, and let me hear what they're
my position. About. If you want to have districting, here's a district.
Number
Kings Hill to East End, and Kings Hill to Fredericksburg.
I said number seated.
So
I'll go number seated.
This will be very interesting.
Yeah, action group. Let's hear your voice on that one too.
Absolutely. So you know what, Colleen, we want to thank you for coming on the show. I think you all are doing. Your group is doing an awesome job in educating people and getting that fight out there. And like I said, whether you agree with what the action that group stands for or not, you're fighting for something.
That's right.
And democracy is a place in our society where we have to have it. And we have to have differences of opinions and share those ideas to hopefully foster ourselves. If you aren't fighting, and I say this, for those people who had that recall, whether you agreed with recalling all of those people or some or whoever you did, what it did was bring attention to a flawed system. And And so for that, the committee has to thank you all because you all stayed the course. You all did not waver.
right.
You all stayed the course, and I think that's an awesome thing that you all are
No,
doing.
we take a
And
lot of licks too.
yeah, you are. But you're still here.
That's part of the course.
And so we thank you for coming on VI Voices. I'm sure you all will be back again at some point within the show to discuss some other stuff. And so we thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. When we return, we'll be back with some final hot topics. Back in a minute. And we are back for one final hot topic. We had a really great show tonight. We had Colleen Clark and Dr. Iris Kern on the show. And so in talking to both of them, this one issue came up, and it was the issue of the makeup of the legislature. You know, Dr. Kern said she wants to reduce it to 9, and Colleen and her group are, this issue regarding on voting and who has the right to be in there. What is your position? And just quickly, we were running out of time, but what is your position on the makeup of the legislature? What should it be?
I like the 50, and I like the 15 because reduce it small. I think it lends for more corruption. I would hope that we can then start to base it more equitably. We probably, because of St. Croix says we may have 7, St. Thomas have 6, St. John have 2. That's how I'll do it. Maybe you have a composition of some at large and some base from each island.
If I would like to see it smaller, if we have to leave it at that size of 15, then it should be part-time. I just don't feel that.
But we would have to change a lot of the legislation because what people don't understand is our legislature does a lot of things that other legislatures don't. Like, remember, if we want to change our zoning, you got to go to the legislature. Other places have zoning boards where there are commissioners, that's what they do. The legislature never gets involved in that. So they're doing a whole lot of stuff that other people won't really have to do. But a part-time legislature isn't necessarily a bad thing if we're going to change those laws along with it.
I just don't think we need a $15 million budget. No.
I think we should revisit how it was before with the 11 senators. If you're going to reduce it to 11
We're on the same
and
page.
change the structure. Change the structure of the legislation. And until you do that, nothing is going to be resolved. Because initially it was set up where it had checks and balances.
Yeah.
We don't have that now. We had 4 districts and 7, 4 at large,
Four at large.
and 7 districts. We don't have that currently, so now they can't challenge each other.
Right.
And unless you do that and address a situation, I don't care who you're putting there.
And at the time, remember saying, at the time, it was 3 from St. Croix, 3 from St. Thomas, and 1 from St. John, made up that 7.
Right.
And then you had 4 at large, and the 4 was to checks and balance the 7.
Correct.
And I agree with you.
It was a mirror effect. It was mirroring Congress.
Well, my position is, I think the entire Senate should be at large. That's my position. Because I need you to be responsible to me.
Right.
And that's why right now, you can have senators in St. Thomas who completely all voted for Diageo because they're not concerned. It's not on their island.
Right. Sure.
And so it's on St. Croix. And will affect us, and we have no recourse against them for what happened.
But the funniest thing about it is the Diageo situation didn't just affect St. Croix. Even though it's on St. Croix, it affected the entire Virgin Islands.
Yeah, but the people in the state profit is who have to smell that entire area when you drive by.
Yeah, they do have to smell it, but look at the contraction or reduction in revenue that took place from the Diageo deal. Isn't St. Croix alone hurting?
Yeah.
It's the entire Virgin Islands. So we need to look at it like that. So you're right.
But the problem is that these senators don't vote like that.
No.
They vote as if, that's a St. Croix issue. Oh, that's a St. Thomas, St. John issue.
Correct.
And until we get them to think of the fact that, well, you better think it's a VI issue.
Right. Correct.
Because if you don't, I'm going to remove you from office. I need the right to be able to remove somebody from office if I don't feel that they're doing it right.
Right, and that's why it boils back down, because the St. Thomas senators know their votes coming from St. Thomas, the same thing for the St. Croix, and so those votes will continue to come down across the island, St. Croix versus St. Thomas.
And if you think about it, Ms. Kern touched on one thing that I think is very, what I like. She alluded to equity of services all throughout the Virgin Islands.
Right.
And I think that's what we should be looking for. That is not about St. Croix, St. Thomas. It's about all 4 Virgin Islands that we have equitable services.
Water Island is in the circumference of St. Thomas.
Okay, yes.
So it's 3.
Okay.
I know they want to make it 4, but it's 3. But anywho, That's for another discussion.
Definitely.
But we want to thank everybody for being on the show tonight. We thank Dr. Kern for coming over. We thank Colleen Clark for coming over. Tomorrow we have an action-packed show as well. We have Mr. Rutnick, who's also running for at-large senator. And we thank Boyd for being here. He and Narcisse will be down there at the debate tomorrow. And we will continue on here. And for all of you on VI Voices, thank you for watching. And remember, your voice can make a difference. Good night, everybody.